Things you'll discover, and many of you perhaps have, that all of us come to the table with our pet projects, with our hot button issues, the things that we are adamant about that need to be addressed. But if we solely organize around that one thing, and if we have victory and we get it done, if we're not able to sustain it, the next generation, it'll be back. And not only will it be back, it will be back with some other things that goes along with it. You remember the story in the Bible that talks about the fellow that got the demon out of his house, but he didn't put anything else in it? And the demon came back with 7 others. All right? So he ended up being in worse shape afterward than he was before. That's because he was unable to sustain that initial victory. And so we've got to build the relationships so that we can sustain the effort beyond the life of that one initiative, which means identifying key local resources, both in the organizations, in the communities, and outside of the community. It means gathering information about the community context. And I said we have to identify what our community is, right? And get the information about it. So we need to know who's who, and where they are, and what they're capable of doing. And so after a few meetings, I knew that 6 blocks from me, that there was a Catholic church, and the priest there was very involved in his neighborhood, and they were doing adult education. I knew that there was a Methodist pastor on the other side of the big dividing street, and that there they were doing tutoring after school. And so there were things that we could tap into and help one another to engage in. And so we learn to identify those resources inside, and then to gather that information about the community and its context, know who's who and what's what. I'll never forget the first action that we took as a group, Developing Communities Project. We had decided that we wanted to do a jobs training center in our neighborhood, because in our neighborhood all the steel mills had closed. And a lot of people that had good jobs suddenly had none. And so the big business district through our neighborhood was beginning to die because people had no money to spend. And so we wanted to get those people retrained and retooled so that they could get different jobs. And so we wanted to bring that jobs training program into our neighborhood, and we held a big meeting. We brought all the preachers together, and we sat down and we talked about it, and we said, well, we're going to bring the mayor's office in, and we're going to sit down, and we're going to talk about it. And one of the main guys that said yes, yes, yes to everything, when we got to the meeting, he tore everything down. In the open meeting with the mayor's representative, found out he was on the mayor's payroll. All right? So it was a loss for us that taught us that we need to learn who's in the room, who we have working with us, because some of the folks we think are working with us might be working against us. And you can't build community, you can't build a house if it's divided. All right? It's not going to stand. And so that was a quick lesson that we learned, and from that point we learned to evaluate the context of the community, and then we never left the meeting, Dr. Tom, without sitting back to figure out what happened. Did it go right? What went wrong? And what can we fix? All right, so we didn't leave that meeting without saying, well, we won't invite that brother back. All right, he's out of the future meetings, and we're going to make sure that we know who we have with us. So you have to gather the information about the context of the community, and then begin to training of local leaders, right, to prepare them for leadership. That is what sustains a movement. All right, that's what sustains the growth in the community. I had a philosophical discussion with one of the mega church pastors in my community. I invited him out to a community meeting. We were doing an issue where our mayor in Chicago decided, because Chicago is getting kind of sophisticated in what they do. Chicago started its own community development corporation as a city, as its own community development corporation, so that the city goes for all of the federal community development block grants. And the city gets all of the block grants and then passes them out where they want them to go. And most of the time, things that are designed for the neighborhoods end up in downtown Chicago. And so the mayor held what he called the neighborhood assembly, and he brought all of the community leaders and community organizations down into the McCormick Place downtown, and he had this neighborhood assembly where he told all of the community groups, this is what I'm going to do for you. And he said, in your neighborhood, we're going to give you this. And in your neighborhood, we're going to give you that. And we're going to build this in your neighborhood. And he didn't tell that he was taking 80% of all the money and keeping it downtown. So after he organized his meeting and his meeting was over, I went back to the South Side, Dr. Walker, and I organized the real neighborhood assembly and called the community leaders from around our community in. And we lifted up all the issues, and we brought the politicians in, and we said, we don't want to hear from you what you're going to do for us. We want to tell you what we want you to do on our behalf, because that's what we elected you for. Here is what we need. We know that the federal government gave you this amount of money in block grants to get this kind of work done. We want our piece so that our community will grow and be stronger. And this megachurch pastor came out. He came out to me and he stood out the whole time. He said, Alvin, I don't know why you do this stuff. He said, you're powerful enough that you could call the mayor up on the phone and say, get this done. And because you call him, he'll do it. And I said, I know. That's exactly why I do this stuff. Because if he only does it because I called him, then he's not responding to the community. He's responding to my reputation. And all he's got to do then is mess up my reputation. Or just get rid of me, right? And then the community suffers, all right? And so I said, but when he looks out there and he sees 600 people, all of them talking the same thing, all of them abreast on the issues, he doesn't know who to get out of the way. Because if he gets rid of one, there's 599 more to step into that place. And so he's got to deal with us. All right? And so it's about developing and training local leaders to prepare them to effectively accept the responsibility of the community and to fulfill our positions of leadership as we drive the initiatives that we develop ourselves to build up our community. It's about strengthening community organizing. Is about strengthening the networks of the various interest groups, both inside our community and outside of our community. Most of us as pastors, those who are pastors know that many times we have difficulties even in our denominational work trying to get certain things done, because if I do one program, somebody else is doing the same thing, and I get upset because they may get more, resource than I get for the same thing. When if we had one meeting prior to that, and we all decide to say that we're going to support you as you do that, but you include all of our needs in the process, and then you support me as I go on and tackle this other issue, we end up getting more for everybody